Good to go. All right. I'd like to call this Development Committee meeting to order. Kathy, would you call roll, please?
Yes. Lee,
Here.
Carter. Here. Walter.
Here. Stand for the pledge. Mr. Green.
All right,
Got it?
I got it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I tried to be loud, Tommy. So.
You're good. You're good. The mayor is on his way. He said start without him. He got stuck behind a train, so we'll do that. We got a heavy agenda tonight, so we'll try and run through this. First, welcome Mr. Platt and Mr. Green. Mr. Evans, Ms. McKee, thanks for joining us again. We'll dive right in. Rob, you want to give us an update?
Sure, happy to. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. As you all know, my name is Rob Platt. I'm the city's appointee to the Southwest Licking Community Water and Sewer District. And I'm here tonight, I'm sure you all have heard, but just to kind of give some details and maybe a little background or extended information. The Water District has continued to seek funding, as you know, for the Pataskala Corporate Park sewer that is needed going up Etna Parkway and Refugee Road. We've had many discussions, and you'll recall that really that's been the hindrance for the development in that area. And actually, it's not just the Pataskala Corporate Park, but it's that northern part of the Etna Corporate Park that at this moment, at least for the last 10 years, has been not unserved by sewer. And so I'm happy to let you know officially, as I'm sure you're all aware though, but Lieutenant Governor Husted did announce last week that as part of the water and wastewater grant program that the governor and Lieutenant Governor have put in place, the Water District is receiving $4.175 million to go towards that Pataskala JRS Corporate Park sewer line. And that is right at half of the project cost. We're looking at about 8.35 with design all told, everything in. I'm happy to say that we are already a month into design. As you'll recall, the Water District did go ahead and take that step to move forward in that, so there was no delay once we did secure funding. So with a 6 to 9 month design, we're already a month in. We're looking to late summer to have our design in place, and then we'll be 9 to 12 months construction right after that. So if there was any way to move it faster, we certainly would. We've done the things ahead of time to try to keep it going even before we knew funding was in place. But now that we know that that missing piece, that missing half is in place, we will continue to work to get the mechanisms in place for that front half, if you will, that we've discussed in the past. But all that will shake out here in the next few months as we continue with design and go to construction. But thrilled to share that with you. I was happy to, honored to be having the mayor join me and my fellow board members last week out at Newark City Hall for that unveiling of that grant award. There were a couple news articles on it, so hopefully the word got out on it. That was the third and final round of that funding, but as you know, there is additional funding coming down also from the state and federal government, so we will continue to seek funds for project in our service area. So happy to answer any questions, but I did want to share that great news with you guys, and again, thrilled that we're able to move that forward.
I'll just say thanks. It's been a long time coming. I know that you all have been working on that hard. I guess we all have been. But that's a huge step for a lot of reasons. I think, too, not only does that help the corporate park, but by making that connection at the water tower, I think that helps the north end of Pataskala all the way up to Licking Heights School, relieve some of that, I guess, capacity. Is that the right word?
Yeah. When I had a chance to speak last week, I referenced that as kind of an unintended benefit, if you will, right?
Right.
The design that's necessary to serve that entire area, get up to Broad Street, size of the pipes to the ability to be able to take some of those additional flows, even though the intent is to get that park served. There are some other benefits that district-wide and city-wide we will benefit from. So absolutely. And I would echo your comments. There's been a lot of time and effort going into this, certainly before I was your appointee, and I know you all have, pulled your hair out trying to find a solution, and we've all tried to work together, and again, just thrilled that this has come together for us. So happy to see it moving forward.
Yeah, and I just lastly, and I'll pass it over, after the first of the year, once we, everything kind of slows down from the holidays, or picks back up, I should say, whatever those ideas are to kind of fund that front half, just work with Nate and Tim and come back, and we can, if there's anything we can do as a committee is what I'm getting at,
Okay.
to help vet that out or whatever, we'd be glad to help be part of that solution.
Great, thank you so much. I will definitely.
Andy?
A couple different questions on the funding, and congratulations
Thank
on
you.
getting that funding. That's awesome. Any strings or anything attached to it?
Not that I've seen yet.
Okay, that's
they,
good
They
news.
don't, they didn't call out a specific match to it other than I think the match simply is 50%, right? They would fund 50% of the project up to $5 million. Our project at 8.35 would use as much of that as we could. So haven't seen any yet. I think we'll be okay though.
Okay, and the second, I know you had presented to us some options. One of them you were particularly focused on as far as property contributions, property owner contributions as they developed.
Yep.
Has that, are you going to be prepared, potentially, as Tommy had said, later, maybe first quarter of next year to go back through that and kind of let us know what your, maybe your plan is, or how you're gonna adapt this to getting the 4.1 from the state?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say first quarter, maybe second. As we go through this design, we're definitely going to kind of vet that out and figure out what the options are. As you said, I've shared before, the district has the ability to assess, properties. Certainly could put in a capital recovery fee type structure. But there, if you guys will remember back when you interviewed me to be your appointee to the water district, it was actually Mr. Lee that asked, what would I do to try to move these things forward? What mechanisms could be put in place and things? And there certainly are a variety of things, incentive packages and revenue mechanisms that you guys have the ability, that we have the ability. We'll continue to go to the state for additional grant funding. So I think we'll have a solution. It's going to take a little time now to figure that out. But certainly we'll be bringing back some options to you. So
Great, thank you.
Well,
No, and on that note, obviously, and I've never been a big fan of assessing the property owners or the future property owners.
sure.
I feel like the rates for the sewer district customers are high enough, and that they shouldn't. So I would strongly encourage you to look at other ways, if we can find any other way, other than putting that on the back of the customers. To definitely do that. So that's all I've got.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Tim or Mayor, Scott, anybody?
No, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.
The work that you and CJ did, and when you think about it, who's your grant writer there?
Actually, CJ submitted that for us, so he did a great job.
Here's a guy that stepped up, and that's probably not, well, now it's in his role of things to do, but, yeah, I appreciate it, and thank you I was honored to be there and accept that, and along with you guys, and it was a great day for everybody.
I think we're good,
All right.
Rob, and feel free to stay or feel free to go.
Okay, well, thank you all for your
Yeah.
time, and I might stay for a minute and hear
Okay.
Nate, but otherwise
Okay.
I'll probably head on.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yep. Nate, you ready to step up?
Sure.
Tim, I'm gonna pass this one over to you, is that okay?
No, that's no problem at all. Either me or Scott, both of us we met with Nate this afternoon. And for purposes of the agenda, because Nate's got a hard deadline as well, he's on his way to another meeting tonight, we're gonna slide 8 up and combine it with 5. So we'll talk about,
Okay.
we'll talk about 5 first. You guys, everybody should have a revamped proposal in front of them. We met this afternoon, we saw a couple of changes, so nothing significant that's gonna necessarily trip this group's trigger, I don't think. The State of Ohio Capital Budget Community Project Advocacy is where we made, I think, most of the changes. It talked before about an ice rink and stuff like that. Obviously, that's not happening, or it's not a community ice rink type focus. So that part has been changed. But I wanted Nate to come in and talk a little bit, because this proposal is a little bit more than what we paid this year for Montrose's expertise. And it's, to be specific, it's about $1,000 a month more. And so I wanted everybody, I believe in a comparison, which I did bring last year's here, most of this is exactly what they do. But I wanted Nate to speak to what that extra was, and then maybe have this group get a feel for whether or not that's something we would be interested in. So, and I will turn it over.
Great. So as Tim said, the one thing that is really, well, the big addition to it is that last bullet point, which is this State of Ohio Capital Budget Community Project Advocacy. Are you all familiar with the capital budget?
I'm not.
Okay, I don't know, we talked about this before, I'm not sure if you have gotten any, I'm sure you have at some point gotten capital budget items. Every 2 years, the state of Ohio, the legislature and the administration funds a capital budget, a community project's capital budget. I apologize, I'm not actually the expert on that side, so if I get any numbers wrong, I'll get you more correct numbers. It's a big budget, I think every year it's between $350 and $500 million. It funds projects throughout the state. It's called community facilities, so it's projects, like in one of the things you mentioned, it's like parks and trails. It could be for other community facilities, like you could potentially put pools into that, senior centers, community centers. Sometimes they fund workforce development programs through this capital budget, community facilities capital budget items. The reason we wanted to bring it to all of you and see if it's something you wanted us to work on, we do this for some other communities. So the Montrose group, you see the economic development face of it. You see me, and you've seen Jamie, actually you've seen her more on the screen, but Jamie that works with me, we both do economic development. All the things that we do for you, that's what Jamie and I do. But we have a whole different side of the Montrose group that's government relations. And a guy named Tim Begum is our director of government relations. He spends all of his time at the State House. And Dave Robinson as well. Dave's the head of the Montrose group. That's where he started his career, and he spends less time at the State House. But they do that. We, as I said, we work with other communities on these capital budget items. We're in the middle of that right now. We have 2 communities, one Strongsville up in northwest Ohio, or northeast Ohio, Forest Park, which is down in Cincinnati, the Cincinnati area, are two of our community capital budget clients. And the good news about that is those don't compete with what you would want, because they're not in central Ohio. I'm not an expert on the capital budget. When I was the development director of Pickaway County, I submitted these kind of things and I lobbied, but I called my state reps and my state senators, and that was about it. But it's a process that requires, if you're gonna get capital budget money, you really gotta be at the State House, figure out the moving parts, you gotta figure out what in the region is being kind of recommended, and how you can fit into those requests and get money from them. So, I think last year the average award was, I think it was about $400,000. The asks are anywhere between $250,000, some communities ask for $5 million, but really, the ask is usually between $500,000 and $1 million for a community project. We did get money for both Strongsville and Forest Park last year. They were both in that $500,000 range, or 2 years ago, in the $500,000 range. So it's something we wanted to see if you all wanted to potentially have us help you with as part of our contract. And again, it's community projects. So if there's parks that you're looking at, if it's trails, we know that the pool, there's issues there. Maybe that's a challenge, or that's something we want to do. Community center service, senior center, whatever. Those are the kind of things we can talk about. We actually are in the process now where the funding for that, or the applications for that, are due in March, so we can start planning for that. With Mark Frazier's your state rep, and I think Senator Hottinger is still your state senator.
Yes.
So they're obviously very involved in it. They're very involved in it because they're both in leadership. So that helps. That helps us with the process. Tim knows both of them very well, so that also helps. Tim Hicken does too, but Tim Bigham on my team.
I was gonna say it.
Tim Bigham on my team knows him really well, and so that helps. So that's the extra item that's on there. The other things are things that we do. The things that we do, you know, Tommy, you've been in a lot of our meetings when we kind of talk about planning, but, you know, the day-to-day things with our economic development agreements, our negotiations with developers, our, you know, putting together CRA plans. We're gonna talk about that CRA guide today. We talk every week. We talk about different projects. We talk about what needs to be done that week. All those things will continue. This is just really an add-on to that. So I know I've talked a lot, but.
That's okay, that's exactly what, and you hit the deadline, so I wanted this group to hear that and ask any questions that might be applicable.
I have a question. When we talk about the capital money, is that something that you have to have a project that you go to them with and say, we wanna do this, or do we just say, hey,
No,
we
have
want
to have a project.
$500,000, and
No.
then they say, okay, and we say, good, we're gonna put it here?
No, we have to have a project. We have to have it fairly developed. I mean, it's not like you have to have engineering plans done or anything like that. We got the Forest Park project that we did. It was an idea of the city administrator. He got the council on board, and we got $500,000 for their project in Forest Park. But the park itself, it wasn't that far along. It was just a priority that the community had to do. So, you know, it has to be something you want, obviously. They don't just give you the money because you ask for it. It has to be something you want. And it has to be something that we can really, you know, build support around, and that we can build support with Fraser and Honiger and the others.
Do you find in looking for these funds, whether they be 250,000 or $1 million, that there's a requirement for matching funds?
There's always a requirement, Andy.
So-
there's usually a 50% match.
I was gonna say,
Yep.
I've always heard that it's 50% or greater.
Absolutely. And if we have greater, I mean, you know, if you're greater, that means better. You have a better chance.
Right,
of getting
you'll
funded.
get to the top of well, depending on what you're asking for.
Yeah, I mean, it is a political process, so sometimes, you know, that doesn't matter as much, but that always helps. It helps us tell the story.
Yeah.
It also helps if it's a project that's far enough along that we can say, or at least far enough in the minds that we can say, yep, this is gonna happen in the next 2 years. That's something too.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question to Tim is, you know, do we have any of these, you know, ideas at this point in time? I mean, I'm on the Parks Board and I hear all kinds of ideas at the meetings. None of them seem to be grandiose, you know, capital or, like you said, senior centers or community centers.
So I would say the short answer is no, but I really haven't, I don't know that we've really sat down and looked at it. That would be a component of this. I think I'm knowing, first of all, the match component of it, and then can we come up with something that we as a council, as a city, think is a high enough priority and get it ready by March? Those are my concerns as to whether, if we had all been sitting here for 4 or 5 years and said, man, we just want to turn that place into the community center, it used to be a factory, I don't know. But nothing comes to mind initially, but I didn't want to discount that as a possibility. And when Nate said, well, I'll put it in the proposal, see what you think, you know, we could, so the answer is, I don't have anything.
I would also say, Tim, we didn't talk about this in full depth, but the other thing we do for all those communities too is the capital budget's in here, but that's just one thing. You know, if there's other grant funds that we see that we want to go after, and we would do that today, but you know, we would do it more. I don't lobby with the legislature today. We'll go apply for the administration. But I think what this adds is adds that legislative component for things that may be a legislative need that we can help the. I mean, I'm not a lobbyist. I can't lobby for you. I'm not registered to do that, and I can't. So, but if we did, if you added that to the contract, that would also help. We can do other things.
Nate, is this, based on your experience with it, if we, say we did this, is it every year we would pick, or is it kind of a one-time, once you're,
The capital budget's every 2 years.
every 2?
Yep, so we
Okay.
can, every 2 years, we pick things to go after. It can be kind of ongoing things, it can be, you know, a new project that we pick every 2 years. There are actually, so the way the state budget works is the capital budget that's in the even years, right? 2022 is going to be nice, okay. And the operational budget are in the odd years. So what we tend to do with our municipal clients is that we will go after the capital budget in the even years, and And then in the odd years when there's operational stuff, we will try to find things that we can fit
Right.
into there. Like, Rob was talking about sewer and water, if that's something the city wanted to go after, we do that. We can go out, if there's funds that we can try to find that, are legislative in nature that we can get out of the transportation budget, we'll do that too.
So this year's the on year, 2023 is the off year.
Correct.
So I guess along the lines of the question that's already been asked, I wonder if this is something where I don't know how we could make all this work by March. So I'm wondering if this is something that, now that we know it's available,
We can always come back.
take a
if
step
that's what
back
you
and
decide
maybe
wanted. Sure.
identify some things, and then we
We can start playing with.
planning for next year's, that, in full transparency, I haven't got a chance to really go through this
That's okay.
completely, so just a quick glance, that's my quick thoughts. What do you think, Mel?
I tend to agree, and I'd also, just the time frame is so short between now and March. I mean, it sounds great, even
Yeah.
to have, even in the off years with the operational budget, to have some assistance with that and the lobbying at the state level. But I would also, I think it's something that maybe at the very first, or one of the first meetings in January, we bring up to the rest of the
Yeah,
members of council and see if they also have some ideas, because so far, I've been really impressed with the Montrose Group and the help that we've received. I know that, Tim has always spoke highly, and it's assistance that we sorely needed. So I am definitely not opposed to it. I guess I'm just trying to wrap my mind around, I'm sitting here racking my
Yeah.
brain with
I was doing the
different
same
things
thing.
going on that we could possibly fit into that.
Mayor's got a list to my left.
I'm
of
sure he
10
does.
things that He
Well,
came up with in 5 minutes.
And there's a lot of communities in Central Ohio that have lobbyists, and they get those funds. I mean, Dublin does, obviously the city of Columbus does, New Albany does. I mean, those are places that are near you. I guess Dublin's a little farther away, but New Albany does, Gahanna does, West Whitehall does.
And we have a lot of needs in the, not necessarily the capital side with things like that, but ours is more, intersections and drainage. And I mean, those are really where our needs are, and if that's something that would be part of the operational side of it, I mean, that's something I think we should be very closely
Absolutely.
looking at.
If you tell me what you want to do, but I could have Tim Bigham come to the meeting if you want in January, if you want to talk more about it, and he can give you more insight into all that. He deals with that every day. I just, hear about it, talk.
I think that might be a good idea, so we can ask him some direct questions about what we could possibly get out of it.
Yeah, like I said, I just glanced at this, I haven't had a chance to go through this completely. Is there, what I'm getting at is while we're asking questions about that part,
Yeah.
I don't wanna hold up the rest of the contract. Is that something we can?
I actually think our contract, I can't remember, Tim, I think it actually, if it doesn't renew right away, it goes month to month. So even if we didn't approve it right now, we'd still be on board for
Could we-
January.
But if we did go with the regular contract, could we add this
Oh, yeah.
at any time?
Absolutely, Tom.
Because what I'm thinking is, not only is there we gotta come up with ideas, but there's also the budgetary. So say we did happen to throw this thing together and we come up with $500,000 grant to do whatever, we haven't
To match
budgeted for that matching funds.
Right.
Right.
So
Right.
that's another reason why I kinda feel like
Yeah.
maybe next year.
Yeah.
But I don't wanna hold up the contract.
No, and we can, however you wanna do it, we can, if we wanna take that out, then we can do that.
I don't know that I wanna take it out, I just maybe put it as
As an addendum.
an
Yeah,
addendum.
we can do that too.
If I might, maybe we take a look at it really quick and see if there's a month-to-month provision while we're still, the only problem with that, of course, is as we're waiting, we're also getting closer to the deadline if we actually had something in here. But as long, I'll just pledge that if it does go month to month and we wanna have Tim in at one of the January meetings, then that, to answer any questions, we'll try to get the other remaining members of council up to speed so that they kind of know what we're talking about. And then he can answer any questions, and then council could make the decision. As it is, council would have to pass a resolution to tell me to enter into the contract for 2020.
Can we just, but that's what I'm asking is, can we just go ahead and, if the committee wishes to push it up to council, can we just go ahead and recommend to approve the contract and add that later if we want to.
That would be the other way to do it.
So we don't have to do the month to month. It's just, but I still wanna have that discussion.
I don't know.
What would
Nate?
you prefer, Nate?
We can do that. I mean, that's fine with me. I would prefer that you approved our contract, right, that we're doing right now. And then if we wanna add on it, we can do it later. I'd be okay with that. And we can even, we'll just amend it.
Yeah, that's exactly what we would do.
Okay.
I'm done with that.
So,
So I would say that this committee would make a motion to continue Montrose on the exact contract that they're at now, with the exact scope that they're on now, unless there's something that, I wanted to ask just one quick question
Yeah.
before we said that. Is there something else, Scott or Tim, that you guys see that you would say, hey, you know, we need this extra help? Or is there something within the existing contract that you're saying, you know what, we never used that, we didn't even ask about it, whatever the case may be? So is there something, would you make any amendments to this, and I know you just got this, but would you make any amendments to the existing contract as it is now?
Personally, no.
Okay,
Agreed.
perfect. Then I would make, I'll
Go
go
ahead,
ahead and
make
make a motion that we recommend to council to approve the Montrose contract as it is now for 2021 with some additional discussion about some extra services that have been presented to this committee on in one of the January meetings.
I'll second that.
Lee,
Yes.
Walter.
Yes?
Carter.
Yes.
Did you get all that, Kathy?
We don't do.
I know.
We don't do them, so.
I'm messing, I'm messing with you. Totally messing with you.
She don't even look stressed,
She looked
so I
at me.
can tell.
She's like, whatever.
She's like, nah.
No, she just called the
She'd
name,
already
so
have
I got
yelled
it.
at me. She would have
Did
already.
you write that down so I can give it?
I can give it to you.
No.
Yeah.
Can you go ahead, can we draft legislation then?
We will, yeah.
Okay.
We'll draft legislation. It'll be on the consent agenda to enter into a contract with Montrose for 2022.
All right, thank you very much.
You good with that?
I love working with y'all, you know.
We appreciate, you've done,
It's been great.
it's been
you know.
great.
And working with
you.
Tim and Scott, you know, it's great. I think we have a great, you know, kind of working relationship, so it's a lot of fun.
Okay.
Well,
We got a lot done in the last year.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, that's an.
Thank
Well, you all know it. I mean, it was fun to, you hired us and then it was like, okay, now we got 4 things right now that
Yeah.
have to be done.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
That's all good. I like this.
No, we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Merry Christmas. We'll see you after the first year. I know you gotta
Also,
go.
no, I'll stick around for that.
Yeah,
I'll stick around.
Oh, wait, we got one more
So
thing.
we
Christmas
talk about
time,
this.
But I'll stick around for the season.
I am,
He's giving you the rush.
all I heard was is that he had somewhere else to be,
Oh, I
so
do, but no,
I was trying to get him out of here.
I know.
I appreciate it, Tommy. Thank you.
Good catch
But
though.
I'll just stay right here. Talk about the process.
Go ahead, Timmy, Scott.
This is gonna be more Scott than I, because this, he has put a lot of work in on this. This group will remember that we are faced constantly with people coming in and saying, well, what's the process? And we've been learning it. So I'll turn this over to Scott, but this is, we came to you in the fall and said we were gonna put together both a flow chart and an information. This is both information for council and when people come in. And we can hand them at the initial meeting and say, this is the process. Take it away, Scott.
Thank you, sir. So as Tim mentioned, and as Nate mentioned, with everything coming in all at once, and we were learning the CRA process, we thought it would be beneficial to all parties involved to have, here's the process, here's how this is gonna work, and here's the steps involved in going through this process. So we developed a flow chart, that kind of goes step by step, and here's step 1 to step 2, so on and so forth, that we're not jumping around, that we're sticking to this process. With that, there was also a thought of not making this an ordinance or changing the code in any way to make this law, but having council, if it's possible, to make a motion to say, we all agree this is the CRA process that we will adhere to, and that this is what everybody can expect as we move through the process. So the flow chart kind of gives a general outline of how the CRA process will work. I've also included a general summary that gives a little bit more information on each step. So essentially, it's to meet with the administration, they discuss their project, they submit the CRA application and the concept plan for us to take a look at. We review that internally. and then we will provide a recommendation to development committee. So if we review their proposal and think this is great, we would recommend, 15 years, 100% CRA abatement. We would then bring that to development committee for consideration. There would be the administration recommendation, and then the company or developer would have an opportunity to share everything that they're looking to do. At that point, it would be up to the development committee to make a recommendation in terms of what the proposed abatement would be, if any. Following that, then it would have a two-track system. So if it's over 50%, they have to go to the school board. To be the company's responsibility to negotiate with the school board and get their sign off. And then on the other side, they would start going through the planning and zoning track to get their appropriate permits. So those two would work concurrently, going through the ordinance, following their agreement with the school board. Nate has provided us with a CRA agreement that we would already have it. We just essentially could fill in the blanks, and then there wouldn't be this back and forth that the city would control and say, here's your agreement, and then we go through the process, essentially take it or leave it. Sounds a little too heavy, but this is what we're looking to do. Here's our proposed abatement. This is what you can expect as we move through the process. So it would proceed through the appropriate readings while it's going through BZA, Planning Commission, or both. We do have a checkpoint in there that after the first reading, if the BZA and Planning Commission have not rendered their appropriate approvals, it's tabled. So that what council is ultimately voting on, they'll know this plan is approved and this is what you're getting. So you don't vote for an abatement and then come to find out the concept plan and everything that you got is completely different and was not approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So this ensures that by the time council has their third and final reading, that the Planning and Zoning Commission and or BZA have granted the appropriate approvals. And then from there on, it moves down to the process. So essentially it goes from the first meeting with the administration to then when you can begin construction, and kind of gives them a general outline of that. It's still in draft form. We need to make a few tweaks here or there, but this is kind of the direction we are looking to go.
Well, and we've been working on it for, a couple months. I think the other thing too, the good thing too is in the flow chart's awesome, and then the actual Word document that we have even lays it out even more so that people can ask, we all know we had one project that went through that was just, they were pushing for things that were like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense and our timeline doesn't fit that. So they can look back into this and say, okay, that's what it's gonna look like. And we let them know, there's no surprises, they see it up front and see what they need to do. So we were trying to figure out a system really just as things continue to move forward, that we all agree to, and that the developers or companies, whatever it is, they understand it and can easily access it.
And I would assume with the experience you've had in other communities, a lot of other communities have something like this.
We do, and actually Scott did a great job of looking at the other communities. There are cities that we looked at that did this, there are counties that do it their way. There's some, and I think the ones that, I won't say do things most efficiently, but certainly effectively, they have a document that they give to you that says, here's how it's gonna work, and here's what you need to give to me to when, and what times, and that really helps move things along.
I was just gonna say that I think something like this has been sorely needed, because it sets an expectation, but it also provides consistency. And I know that a lot of what we've done, especially on this committee, over the past couple of years, is put things in place to do exactly that.
Yeah.
Is to give some guidelines and some consistency. So I think that helps, and it will probably help streamline processes in your department as well.
Oh, definitely.
And so, I don't know, now, all of those steps, you're the expert, so I leave all those steps to you. But the process itself is something that I'm really in favor of.
It's a good combination of the process between the planning and zoning process and the tax abatement process, actually. Because we were talking through it, and where things get bogged up sometimes is that they wanna push forward with one thing, and the other thing hasn't even been presented to the planning commission or anything like that. And we're like, wait a minute, you can't, there's too many unanswered questions if you're gonna just bring the abatement forward without the planning and zoning
question, and this is kind of an off the wall, but just out of curiosity, because I use these charts on a lot of things, not obviously what's in the box, but chain of command type of things. Is there any flexibility built into it to where, say there's a company that's just different, that doesn't fit exactly into this process, that it's like, man, we really want, they bring a good tax base in, or they bring something to the community that is very beneficial to the community, but it doesn't really fit this. I hate to see, when we have a flow sheet that works 99% of the time, but there's that one outlier that we may want to make an accommodation for. Is there flexibility built into this for that one time?
I mean, go ahead, Scott.
That's the kind of the philosophy behind making a policy rather than law, because then if there is a company that this is great, we need to move quickly, we could lose them, that allows us to be flexible within this. That we can, if it's read by emergency or things like that, we don't have to go through the full process. So there is flexibility for those outliers, but 99%
Yeah.
should follow that.
Yeah, and that's exactly, that's what I was gonna say. There are pieces in here that we have to follow by state law, right? There's no flexibility. But there's other pieces in there that we know that we can, if we need to move it a lot quicker, because we're dealing with a company that's, bringing 5,000 jobs and whatever, we can absolutely do that, and we can, we can do it in an emergency and have it in have it one meeting. We can do development, we can do development committee quicker. I mean, yeah, there are ways to do that we can work within that system. And I think that's the other thing is, as Scott said, it's a policy, it's not a rule.
Right.
So, or it's not law, so it's not like if we break one of these, we're, breaking a code of the city.
Fair enough. Andy, you have anything?
Nope, looks good. I fully agree that, having a standard for everybody to hand them at least at the starting line, that they know that they have to do X, Y, and Z. I think that's great. I think it's absolutely great. Beneficial. What city would you say you may have followed the most?
I would say the city of Delaware. Through my research, there was some communities that said we do a maximum of 15 years, 100%, and everything else is negotiable. Other cities, I know New Albany was more prescriptive in what they had, but the city of Delaware had a general process guide, not fully as fleshed out with a flow chart and everything, but it kind of said, here's the steps you can expect as we go through this process.
Yeah, and I would tell you that there's a lot of really, I've not heard of problems in the city of Delaware. Say much about the Delaware County, but the city of Delaware does work very well, and so that's great. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so what's the next step for you guys on this? You need to tweak a few things, you said? You're not ready for us to do anything with this, right?
Boy, it's really close.
In our discussions this afternoon, there became the question of when the CRA agreement goes to the state, there's an application fee of $750. It was, when does that check come in from the company to us so that we have the application fee? So that was pretty much the only time we were looking to tweak it. So our thought, I believe, was when the ordinance is drafted, because by then they're aware that development committee has made the recommendation to council that should they choose to proceed with the recommended abatement, that would be the time that they supply us the fee for the application. I spoke with Jamie just to make sure that we're not holding on to a check for too long, but in my conversation with him, he was comfortable. If it was made out to the state of Ohio, we can hold on to it. If it's made out to the city, that's a different story. So that's pretty much the only tweak I would see is adding that in, and aside from that, I can see it moving on to council, and we'll have to look to see if it's a motion, if that works, or just kind of becomes policy, but that would be the thought that moves on to council for review.
The only thing you would add is the CRA state fee.
Would go in number 7.
Okay.
Where the ordinance is drafted, because then, should they choose to move forward, they know the offered abatement, they choose to move forward, then we can have that, once
And if I may, that'll also keep somebody from making their initial application, giving us a $750 fee, coming to this group and you guys saying, no, that's not tripping our trigger. We're not giving you 100% abatement for that. Or we would not endorse that. The three of us would not endorse that. And then you gotta turn around and give it back to them. So that's why it's a good addition at 7.
Tim, Nate, you guys have anything else you wanna add to it?
Nope.
Mel, Andy?
Okay.
With that being said, if that's the only change, I'm gonna make a motion to recommend to council approval of the CRA process guide with the change for the state fee.
Second.
Roll.
Lee,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes?
Carter,
Yes.
Tommy, now you can wish Nate a Merry Christmas.
Are we good?
We're good.
Okay.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New
Merry
Year.
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas.
Have a great time. We'll talk. Well, we'll talk before the first of the year. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you. Thank you, Nate.
Thanks, Nate.
Third one. All right, moving on. Tim, I'll leave it up to you. Do you want to give us 6 or 7 first?
Well, let's go in order now. Really, this is just a quick update. This is the Refugee Road update. Where do we sit with everything that's going on? Obviously, we have 2 new trustees in the audience who we thank for coming today to hear this update. But really, we are in a bit of a holding pattern with the Refugee Road project. We need, if you will recall, I wasn't sure if this group did, but one of the things that we had a concern about was buy-in from the 2 different entities and whether or not they were confirmed as being in on the project. As a result of that, late in the fall, and I don't know if I gave this group an update on it, although I might have spoken to each of you individually, I contacted Bill Lozier from the TID, and I said, we have this large sum of $900-some thousand from Red Rock that was going to go to the project. From this point on, don't do any work in case we have to keep that. If you remember, there's a road development agreement with Red Rock that talks about upgrading the intersection of Refugee Road and Etna Parkway. And if the TID had continued down the road of doing their due diligence, they were going to gobble through some of that money. So we had tentatively spoken to Mr. Carlisle from Aetna about getting an MOU together. Andy even had an initial meeting with him because they were meeting on something else. And it never came to fruition. So it's kind of in a holding pattern at this time. The real point where I feel like we'll be jumping the shark or past the point of no return is if we decide that we have to spend that Red Rock money solely on the intersection, then that is the beginning of what happens with the rest of the corridor. To remind everybody, TPA is still in for their $1.5 million. I spoke to TPA. They said that they intend to move forward in the spring with the initial stages of building there. In the meantime, we'll have to have a series of meetings with everybody involved, just to see where each side is and whether or not they feel that they can still remain committed to it. If you remember, the TPA's road agreement, which was to be that 1.5, does have a sunset clause in it, although we added something that said if that doesn't happen, they would still might be willing to give us the 1.5 million for some type of an upgrade on Refugee Road. I think it could take the form of is it just 2 lanes? Is it just an improvement? Is it what we wanted? Is it what everybody's been planning for? These are all the questions that I think ultimately we're gonna have to get answers to, but we really won't get that until we start sitting down and talking with that working group probably in January. And then, of course, with our, whoever the designee might be from Aetna, whether it's one or both, or if all 3 would, I guess 2 creates a quorum. But I just wanted everybody to know that because it was moving along so significantly for a while, and then all of a sudden, it just kind of stopped. And so I just wanted the development committee and the street committee too will probably give a similar update to the street committee, so that everybody kind of is on the same page with where we're at. And I'm happy to answer any other questions. If there are questions still lingering about anything, I'll give you my best answer.
Do you have anything, Mel? Andy, do you have anything?
I don't.
I would just say that, you've already mentioned it, but I think sitting down after the first of the year, when the new trustees are in place, as a work group, which I don't think, Andy, are you involved in those? I have not.
I have been.
So that everyone has a full understanding. I think it's a great idea and it's fair. It's fair to everybody involved. And then we can all as a group, as neighbors, decide what's the best path forward for each of our entities.
Yep.
So,
I would add that if we only do Refugee Road, it would still be a partnership between the township and the city. And the TID is a proper entity to run that, even then, because it's multi-jurisdictional and it'll involve the county engineer, it'll involve funds from both groups, assuming that we are moving forward with a roundabout feel. So the fact that the TID might still be involved shouldn't come as a surprise. But, I've actually had the opportunity to meet with Ms. McKee and Mr. Evans, and so I'm looking forward to that, to moving forward with whatever form it takes, whatever tack it takes.
yeah, I think the best thing is have your meeting whenever that is and come back and we can talk about whatever you guys come up with as a group and we'll decide where to go from there. So I think it's a good, solid group so far and just keep us posted. Really nothing else I don't think there's anything else that we can do.
There isn't.
Yeah.
I just didn't want it lingering out there with no answers for the development of the street committee.
Okay.
I wanted everybody to be
Fair.
kept up to date.
Go ahead, Andy.
Tim, is it worthwhile getting hold of Lozier and finding out what all he did accomplish?
It is?
I know he had a month and a half or 2 months in there where he was wanting to move forward with survey and so forth, and maybe some reaching out for some right-of-way acquisition, that kind of stuff, just to find out what his work product is. What did he get done?
That would be probably number one at that working group.
That's one thing, is where are we? And then schedule obviously was our next
Right.
biggest hurdle for meeting the developers' needs. So,
I do have one other thing, and it would, I guess, apply to either scenario, whether we were just doing something at the intersection of Red Chip and Refugee, or we decided to go together on the original plan. Now that it looks like the water and sewer, they have the money secured to start that project. Does that change anything from the TID's perspective now that within the planning, now that the sewer pipes, the way I take it's happening?
Maybe a little bit, in that the Refugee Road corridor would want to be connected to the sewer, but I think that's more a little wider, right-of-way type situation.
You mean from Mink?
From Mink to Etna Parkway.
Okay.
But nothing, the TID was pretty much focused on road-based stuff.
I didn't mean like adding it to the project, I didn't mean it that way, I meant just from like a planning.
yeah, it'll affect it in finding a location for that sanitary to go.
Yeah.
Whereas before, we may not have had that totally planned out or figured out.
And I'm sure you will, but that's probably a good talking point for your January meeting too.
Absolutely.
That money's been secured to start, so.
Absolutely.
Okay. If nobody else has anything else on that, we'll move to Taylor and Kennedy.
And this is gonna be Scott again.
Thank you, sir. If you folks will remember this proposal for this development at this location was presented to Development Committee, let's say in maybe September or October. The parcel, it's probably a lot easier to see on the map in front of you, but I do have it up here. If you look at sub-area A, that's all currently zoned R20. And then the rest of the parcel south of sub-area A is zoned plain manufacturing, so the property is split zoned. time they came into development committee, they still had the 12 lots proposed along Kennedy Road, so that has not changed. And at the time they came before development committee, there was an area of townhomes directly south of sub-area A, and then along the southern border, there was a portion of the property that was going to remain as plain manufacturing, and at that time was supposed to be office warehouse for tradespeople such as plumbers, electricians, etc. So they amended their plan and filed for Planning and Zoning Commission. They went in November. The plan, it was a straight rezoning. They proposed just to go to multifamily, not a planned development district. So the rezoning is essentially just changing the color on the map. There's no official plan associated with the rezoning, but they did provide a concept plan of what their intentions were. So that middle area was again all townhomes, similar to the what's shown in the bottom left corner. That was the majority of the middle section, and then the bottom was vacant, except they had now said we're looking to do an ice arena. That went to Planning Commission where it was tabled. There was some discussion in terms of them being of the opinion that they could not rezone to a planned development district without a base zoning that was residential in nature. And to some degree, I can see how they would interpret that, because it says future density is based upon the original sub-zoning. So if it was agriculture and it's 100 acres, it has to be 10 units an acre, your density would be 10 homes. And it was tabled to look into that. Also, there was some questions about, since this is zone plan manufacturing, and if they wanted to do, for example, a warehouse, would trucks be permitted on Taylor Road? Because if you look at Havens Corners in Cleveland, it says that trucks are prohibited on that section of Taylor Road. If you're on Taylor Road, it says through trucks are prohibited. So Alan and I looked through the code and spoke to Brian, and so long as they come in on a state route, so let's say this is gonna be a warehouse, they come in on 16, they drive up, make their delivery or pickup at the warehouse, and then leave directly south to Broad Street. So they can deviate and come off the state route, but it has to be with a specific destination in mind. So they couldn't pass through and attempt to drive up to 161. So with that, after the tabling, we met again with them in late November, and with the law director's opinion is that, yes, it does read in the sense that you can have a base residential zoning, but it's not absolutely required. Because many planned development districts in the city started out as ag, and a 300 house subdivision is not 10 houses, so it's all negotiable as part of the plan. With our meeting with them, they still did not agree with that assessment. There's also the question that it is split zoned, so if the contention is we need a base residential zoning, that those 12 lots to the north are currently zoned residential, so if that's the concern, it does qualify for that. Furthermore, their concern is with the planned development district, if it goes through, it's rezoned, there's certain benchmarks along the way that if those are not met, then and there's no extension requested and or granted from council, council has the ability to then rezone the property back to planned manufacturing or another zoning district of their choice. That being the case, traditionally, when we've had planned development districts expire, they just remain as a planned development district with no associated plan. With this, their other concern is they see value in the planned manufacturing zoning district. So their concern is if this were go to planned development district and they do not meet their benchmarks and an extension is not granted, they want assurances that it can be rezoned back to planned manufacturing. They did meet with the school. Density was a point of contention or an issue that came up at the planning commission meeting, just in terms of the density of the project. So this is what was given to us following our meeting in November. As you can see, sub-area A2 and A4 are still proposed multifamily development. I was under the impression that sub-area A2 would be single-family homes. However, it's still proposed for multifamily, and then if we look at the site data table under sub-area A2, it still calls them townhomes. So I don't know if that was a mistake or that is still their intent, but I thought it was supposed to be single-family homes. They're coming back to Planning Commission in January to take a look at this plan. Their goal is to, since it's been tabled, they would remove it from the table, have discussion with the Planning Commission, and then place it back on the table. I know from a staff perspective, they state that they're residential developers, and these would be, the townhomes would be condos. However, that does require conditional use through the Board of Zoning Appeals. Apartments do not. So if they got the multifamily zoning, there's no guarantee that they move forward and get a conditional use either by BZA's decision or theirs to make a condominium. So they would have the legal right to make those apartments, which is another reason why staff recommended that the planned development district was the proper route and would be the most efficient to benefit them to go through that process.
And if you, to kind of put it into perspective, that is exactly what happened on Watkins Road.
Right.
Watkins Road, I was about to say that.
Keep talking. I gotta use your
So,
real quick.
so that's exactly why the administration, held that belief, or at least maintained that in the meeting. I would also say pluses and minuses, when they first brought this into this group, if you recall, when you see what they draw as townhomes in the lower left-hand side here, that was all over the whole site. This looks much more to me like single-family homes, and indeed they said single-family homes in our meeting. But what they took to Planning Commission after talking to this group wasn't significantly less in density. This is, if those are single-family homes.
But it still says townhomes, so we don't know if that was a mistake.
And we'll have to we'll make sure that that gets clarified. But, I will also say Scott is being kind, when they talk about, well, we could always just put warehouses here.
Go
I really don't think that the answer is, that's feasible for the traffic reasons that Scott talked about. And in the limited time I've been here, nobody's ever talked to me about putting in a warehouse that wasn't getting an abatement. And there is no abatement available unless council chooses, to put on this property. So I think this is the way to go. They were good to meet with. If this is the way the plan morphs out and comes to fruition, then I think we're okay with that as long as they're following Scott's guidance on the plan.
And I would, the interesting issue that I find from my perspective is they're concerned about if it goes to a plan district, well, you can rezone it then after to whatever you want. But if their rezoning to multifamily were to go through, they absolutely lose their plain manufacturing zoning classification. There's no option to rezone it back. So I'm a little unclear in terms of the rationale to choose multifamily, even though they say we need this base zoning district. I don't know that that's fully accurate in how the city views a planned development district.
Go ahead. I'll wait.
And I'm just going to say that none of the infrastructure in that area supports any of this. I mean, that roadway on both Kennedy and Taylor, with the tracks and everything in that area, does not support multifamily homes right there, any more than what there already is in that area. It's the exact same reason we had a problem giving TPA access to use Taylor Road. The traffic capacity is not there for the additional. This, to me, is no different than the homes that tried to go in off Summit. And even though those were single family, the density was the same way. Those roadways are barely 2-car passable. how in the world would we add this in there?
I agree 100%. I mean, I like the fact that they've improved, they've lowered the density. I'm curious what the schools thought when they met, but
And under no circumstance can that be left open to apartments. That's a nightmare.
Agree.
Andy?
I have one question. In looking at the current use that could come out there, and with the impact fees that we put together and that kind of stuff, what would they be required to do as far as a traffic study? Because I'm gonna echo Mel's concerns. If they came in with some plan that had warehouse, and I'm not saying that they would, but if they did, what would they have to do to get that approved?
If this were to be a warehouse,
Let's just say it, as they say, it's set up for tradesmen, or for these small, maybe 60,000 square foot warehouses with offices in front of them. They would meet their code, they would meet exactly what they're zoned for. What would they have to do other than paying the impact fees? Would they have to do anything as far as traffic or a study of any type?
they would have to do a traffic access study.
So they'd have to determine whether they needed turn lanes or not.
That's correct. And they would have to go through the Transportation Corridor Overlay District and receive approval through Planning Commission. Well, they would go to Planning Commission for a plain manufacturing application.
But that wouldn't affect anything beyond their entrance, essentially.
That's correct. Currently, within the subdivision regulations, it talks about a traffic impact study. Now that the impact fees are in place, it's somewhat irrelevant.
Right.
So it's more of an access study at this point.
So the second part would be, if they were to get a rezoning, and let's just, not apartments, but single family, let's assume these are single family, and there are apartments shown on here, but these are single family on Kennedy. Can they, or would it be possible to require them to do more than just an access study at that point in time if they're asking for a rezoning?
If it's a straight rezoning, just to, if we say it's R20, the
Right.
whole thing, they
Mhm.
want R20. That's possible, it's negotiable, but at that point, if the rezoning aspect would not require the traffic study, that would come in as part of their process through the subdivision regulation.
Okay. And that's the point, I was just trying to figure out, with what they have here, they could develop and could really, I'm thinking about tradesmen. I'm thinking about people that are bringing in in vans. They're gonna be bringing in 60, 70, 100 vans in and out of here, back and forth all day. And we have, with our impact fees, we have really nothing to say at all. Correct me, stop me when I go too far over that edge. With a rezoning, we do have something to say. We can actually affect intersections, make them have some studying done, have some other things done that could.
We would not, again, negotiable.
It's negotiable.
Per code, we
Right.
can't say you have to fix this intersection.
And I'm sorry, Tommy.
No,
And
you're good.
this is just something that, because, and I've said this before, but we all know how slow moving the wheel is to get all of the intersections that we need updated, and there are so many. And, we finally, I've been on council for 8 years, and we're finally gonna see in the next 5 years, by the time my kids graduate and I have grandchildren, Broad and Summit done, right? I'm gonna get on a soapbox. But we still have Summit and Havens Corners. That's a nightmare. We still have Taylor and Havens Corners. Nightmare. Kennedy and Taylor is not much better, but it's one of the smaller, we have Broad and Taylor. And until we allow ourselves, I don't subscribe to the philosophy that you have to build in order to update your infrastructure. I think that's asinine. If we know the problems are there, we should be addressing those to allow for the capacity when this stuff builds in, because it's already a problem. And I do not see the benefit of compounding on until we have the capacity. If those roads were widened and we already had the Broad and Summit intersection done, the Havens Corner and Summit roundabout at Taylor and Havens and Havens Corners, maybe, then we would be having a different discussion. But we are compounding huge problems. It's already dangerous right there. And there's a number of accidents at the intersection of Taylor and Kennedy. A lot, because it's constantly people trying to turn left or they're turning into traffic all the time.
But Mel, you're hitting right on the point. That's my point is, given the old way, if we did this under the old fashion, which was before impact fees and so forth, their traffic study would say, well, they're already failing. We don't have to do anything. That's what they would say. We're in a little bit of a different, I think we're in a different position,
Slightly
probably a
different.
better position to say, well, we know under the old way you would have less to do because we already know all the development that's happened around this is causing dramatic problems. With Taylor not being widened, even further south, more problems. A railroad track that's a disaster, there's just no fun to
The
travel.
whole thing is a disaster.
What I guess I'm pointing out though is that if they want to do something or want to negotiate to help with those issues and get, a give and take type of situation, I would certainly be willing to listen to that, to understand that this last piece isn't necessarily the one that caused all the issues, but it certainly will make them worse if it were developed.
Well, Scott, what you're saying is that's not necessarily true, though?
Per code, we do not have the legal authority to say, for example, Taylor and Kennedy is bad, you have to put in a turn lane. If we were to negotiate and said, well, tell you what, I know you want this density, we'll give you some of this if you give us that.
Right, that's where I was going with it.
The issue is typically that's more in line with the plan development district process because that grants greater flexibility. When we go with, I just want to rezone X to Y and just change the color on the map, that severely limits our ability to negotiate those items with them because they aren't writing, the code has all the text and regulations, they aren't writing their own. So with that, just changing the color on the map, that severely limits our ability to negotiate.
Planning and zoning, and I know that you gave the whole concerns with all the jargon, but when you come right down to it, what is planning and zoning leaning towards? They don't want to rezone it, they want to leave it as is?
Their thought was, why do you want to rezone it to multifamily? What's the rationale behind it? And they said, well, if you read your code, we have to have a base residential zoning classification. So we want to rezone it to multifamily, and then we'll do a plan after.
Right.
And we want to run those together. But the odd thing is that it doesn't work that way. And there's already a zoning classification designed for exactly that. So we're saying, here's the easiest way for you to work these things out, but they do not wish to go that way.
They, meaning the developer.
Correct.
Is there a way to, through that rezoning, assure them, or assure isn't the right word, put in language that would say, if you don't meet your 1 year, your 2 year, you don't get an extension, then the zoning basically goes back to what it was. Is there a way to put that into an agreement with them? An agreement isn't the right word, a zoning with them.
If they were to rezone it to like a planned development district?
Exactly.
There's the possibility of including it, perhaps as part of the ordinance, you could make that official that if you not meet these benchmarks, then city council will move to rezone it to planned manufacturing. I don't know that it's totally legal to do that, even though it's in the code. I'd want to explore that with Mr. Zatz.
Yeah, the reason,
But-
because what I'm hearing you say, Scott, is we want them to utilize that so that there's more flexibility to do the things that we feel need to be done. and they're looking for that trade-off, is it saying, well, okay, well, we just don't want it to be, from what I heard you say, council could put it to whatever they wanted if they don't meet those benchmarks. So
Based
could they
upon-
not agree up front to put it back to what it was? That's the only question I'm asking, and then maybe that's telling me I'm crazy. But I would think we'd be able to do that, and then they can come to the table and talk about some of these other things that are absolutely necessary.
From my perspective, I don't know why, if I were in the situation, I don't know why I would give them the assurance that it will go back to plan manufacturing. Because then that creates more problems, because now warehouse is still on the table. That I think, because this, from my understanding, that this was rezoned in conjunction with properties in Columbus. Years ago, Columbus went residential, and it's just kind of languished out there. If we rezone it to planned development district, and for whatever reason their benchmarks weren't met, or there's no extension granted, I think it would be better served, the city would be better served to leave it as planned development district. And then if they say, hey, we changed our minds, we want to do the small office warehouse for tradespeople, then it's already zoned planned development district, they just have to update their plan.
Okay.
That would be my thought, instead of letting a use that really is not appropriate for this area hang out there still.
Well, okay. I was gonna say, just south of this is definitely, plant manufacturing though. I mean, anyhow, okay, that's fine.
There's the
TS Tech,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, there's.
concrete.
Concrete plant.
Like
Mhm.
right in the middle of residential, which is insane.
Yeah, it's odd.
What I hear though is also that the concern is almost from Mrs. Carter is almost like, there can be nothing there. I mean,
That's where I stand on it right now with the infrastructure as it is. That's what I would say.
and so that's a difficult.
And I might be that might be an extreme
Low voice.
position.
No, I get it, but there's, if we move forward with that PDD concept, then we are moving forward, we're gonna get some concessions possibly. We get some stuff that helps. It's not going to, nor do I want anybody to think that that concession is going to be a widening of the road all the way up to Pavin's Corners. And, we shouldn't operate under that either. I just wanna make that clear as we talk to these people and try to come up with solutions that we think help us in some ways. I want you all to be cognizant of that fact, so.
And the other unique aspect of this, that lots 1 through 12 along the north all meet the R20 zoning. So if they chose to, over the years, just do lot splits,
They
they're
could.
well within their legal right to do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't have a problem with the houses off of Kennedy.
Well, the lot splits for 12 houses you can deal with, but when you're talking about, numerous multifamily units, that's a whole different conversation than even if they were talking about single-family unit, all, more widely spread, but they're really, the density in that is not a very big area. I mean, that is going to be a highly congested, one in and one out area that I don't see how they're gonna manage.
I agree. Is this the ice rink on the bottom right?
Yes.
Yes.
An ice rink?
I gotta be honest, that part I don't have a those are in so high demand.
Yeah, there's,
Yeah, it's just that,
And I
just
think
how
we-
they came up with that and
Yeah.
all of this is crazy to me.
I don't,
actually, I know who did. It was the, school. Licking Heights
Really?
came up with it. Actually,
Well, they've come up with crazy stuff.
they
before,
come
that
up with
would
good
surprise
stuff every
me.
once in a while, but there is a huge demand for ice.
I know there is.
Time and ice
A good
space.
friend of mine works at
There
the
is.
chiller and it's like, it's
It's,
insane.
it's 24/7.
It is.
Yeah.
Teams go in at 3:00 in the morning.
Awesome.
Scott, would there be, they have tried to make it better. There's 2 entrances now, but it doesn't change what's going on Teller Road. And again, the apartments are completely no way for me personally. And the multifamily with the road the way it is, do they have zero appetite for doing what they did with the houses out here on Kennedy throughout and keeping the ice rink? Could they not do the R20 on the entire lot minus the ice rink?
They could completely possible to go through that process and they can attempt to rezone it to whatever they like, but due to the mixed use nature of this, I think they'd be, plus with the complexity and certain aspects of making assurances to council so they feel comfortable, that's why the planned development district seems the most appropriate. That being said, they could rezone it all to R20, sans the ice rink if they chose.
Well, and they all but said when they were in here that they're not going to do that because it won't make them any money.
I was about to jump in and say that exact same
That's
thing.
exactly, I mean, when they were in here, cause we asked them,
But it's all relative. I mean, I get it, the rental income, but, you know, they're selling an R20, I could, if they came back, like I said, I have no problem with Kennedy. I like the ice rink concept because they're in dire need in our region. And I think, I didn't know the part about the schools, but that doesn't really change my opinion on it. It's just another reason that I like it. I guess for me, the apartments are an absolute no, but if they came back and they were R20 on everything, we're willing to make some upgrades that on Taylor, especially at that intersection, I could get a little closer to, but I don't know that they're willing to do it, so I don't even know if it's worth the conversation.
What is the consensus on the proposed multifamily zoning? So they're saying we wanna rezone it to multifamily, which allows condos, but that's an extra step. But if it's rezoned to multifamily,
It also-
they can do apartments.
no. They leave, if we do multifamily, and this is a no, for me. It leaves room for apartments, that's an absolute no.
Agreed.
I'm gonna be the opposite side of the coin and say that as long as there's some negotiation available to fix some of these problems that are out there that are no fault of theirs, but fault of everything else that developed around it. You know, I'd rather get part of the pie fixed than none of it fixed, because, I mean, as Mel said, it's a disaster, well, I'm not gonna say disaster's not the right word. It's not good now. We'll just leave it at that. It's not good now, and if this stayed a cornfield forever, it's still not good. It doesn't improve.
Mhm.
And so we have no money to fix it, and there's not we're not gonna be able to improve it without trying to find some way to get money out of a development somewhere to try to do this. And I haven't studied the impact fees enough to know exactly what we'd get out of this for impact fees, but I don't think it's gonna be nearly enough to fix the things that need to get done. And again, if it were a bunch of little warehouses, it's still going to be bad. That's all I'm trying to, that was where I was going with it, was, all right, if there's something that does work, that works financially for the development side of it, but is negotiable for our side of it to improve items, signal, obviously, I'm not talking about turn lanes or anything like that, because that's gonna be required anyhow. But there's something they can do to help this area and help the traffic, I would be able to listen to that.
They would have to do a substantial upgrade to the intersection at Taylor and Kennedy.
I think so.
I would want, that road would have to be widened from the tracks, because not only are you impacting the Taylor and Kennedy intersection, it's the Cleveland and Taylor intersection, which is also bad and gets backed up with the tracks and the train. So those intersections would have to be substantially updated for them to put houses on Kennedy and exits off onto Taylor with additional houses.
So on top of impact fees, can you also do things like TIFs in this area? Could you do things that would generate funds to do exactly what we've gotta do in this area?
A TIF could be created, community authority, different aspects could be investigated to do that.
We're talking millions of dollars.
Well, and the benefit, if we could get those intersections updated, is those are not on our intersection improvement plan
Right.
right now. So those are so far down the line, we're talking probably 12, 15 years if we ever get the others taken care of. So,
With the exception of Taylor's and Havens Corners.
right,
Yeah.
but I
That's a
mean,
little
those two with Kennedy and Cleveland. And Cleveland Road, I'm just trying to think about, and obviously I live there, yes, but this isn't entirely selfish. I mean, I look at those people on Cleveland Road and feel really bad for them. That road is not two-car passable.
No, it is not.
People are getting their mailboxes knocked off all the time because cars clip them and they have people in their yards. And, I mean, it is terribly narrow. And you have buses, and so just the additional amount of traffic for those folks alone is really, I mean.
Well, and I think sometimes, we've heard this a couple times before, you know, most of the traffic that's in this area is transient. It's
It's all
passing through.
transient.
So it's not necessarily the home site that's there at Brookside, or Brooks Edge that's causing it. It's the guys that are flying by, and that's not gonna change.
Well, they're cutting through from Wagner
Yeah.
to Summit
They're avoiding all the other,
because
bad
they're
traffic
coming
areas.
across for, you know, the way the school district cut the lines. I mean, I was guilty of it. I live off Taylor. I'm almost next door to South Elementary, and they put my son at West off of Wagner. So every morning I had to cut across, and I went through Kennedy because it's right there. You know,
Yeah.
it's the same thing for everybody else. They're cutting back and forth on those roads that were never intended to have that amount of traffic on them.
I just wanna be clear, I'm not for apartments, I'm not trying to be.
Oh, I
I'm
know.
just saying, if there's a
I hear what
tool
you're saying.
we can try to harness and use to fix some of these things, we're gonna be better off than we are today, that's all.
I'd like to ask really quick, I'd like Scott to tell you guys, because we have some input to the planning commission, but we certainly do not think for them, or, you know, if they were to pass something, what is the next step?
So if planning commission were to render a decision either up or down, it moves on to council for consideration as part of the rezoning process. So the thought tonight would be they're showing all multifamily essentially is the rezoning. If that were to come to council regardless of the decision from planning and zoning, is that something that council would be in favor of or not? We haven't approached them to say,
Not
well, let's use
multifamily.
Well, I
community
think-
authority or some of those that I think, again, would be better suited with the plan
More
development.
importantly, I
district.
want you guys to know that an approval at one doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
Right.
It will still come to council.
I would hope that those discussions would be had at the committee level, at the planning and zoning level, and talk through those options. And then those options, if available, I'm not saying they are, but if they are available, then brought to council, so the council, in my own, and I'm speaking only for myself, that the way, you can weigh the benefits versus the not benefits, and see which one, if we're going to be made more than whole with this deal, or if there's something where we're getting a small piece of pie. We're not getting, we need to solve some problems out here that we can't afford to solve.
Mhm.
Well, and now
That's all.
they're putting a Dairy Queen on the corner of Broad and Taylor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
You wanna talk about it?
you wanna talk about people cutting through now?
Right.
Hey, Scott, is there, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm just gonna clarify it. Is there any way to say you can do condos, but they cannot become apartments?
If it's not multifamily.
If it's rezoned to multifamily, you cannot, council cannot limit
Stop.
the uses in terms of you can't do that.
See
They
that?
have the ability to do everything within that zoning district.
See, that'd be a hard no on that.
It'd have to be a planned development district to rule out apartments.
That's correct, cause then you can say apartments are not permitted.
If we can, I
Right-
guess
Right into the plan.
where I'm at, after listening to both sides and looking at it, I'm definitely against that. I do like I said already, I like the ice rink, I like the houses on Kennedy, but we've got a problem. And if we can work with them to resolve that problem, however that is, whether it's TIF, impact fees, whatever, you know, some R20 with possibly, again, it's gonna depend on them, some condos, not apartments, cause I realize there's also a demand for that too. It would have to be some type of combination of that, but that road, we can't, it would have to benefit the residents and the city on that road for me to get behind that, if that makes any sense at all.
It does. It sounds like if they proceed with a straight multifamily rezoning, they're probably not gonna get much traction. However, if they were willing to look into, we could work with them on other options to help TIF, community authority, those types of items that can be incorporated into the planned development district or something along those lines, and maybe the multifamily condo aspect, more folks get behind.
And I would strongly lean on the Kennedy and Taylor intersection, since they'll be strongly impacting both of those. If I had it my way, it would be Cleveland and Taylor as well, but primarily Kennedy and Taylor.
No, just looking at this, and even if this was watered down a lot, you know, a TIF would generate a couple $1 million a year off of this. I mean, it's substantial, which a TIF or a Kennedy and Taylor intersection, if you just wanted to put signals up there, you're probably $500,000 to put signals up there and turn lanes. That's not bad. You know, you could pay for it pretty quickly. So anyhow, that's my 2 cents. I'd like to see him, just to add in, I'd like to see him extend the trail that has been very successful in Taylor on Kennedy Road. That would be that'd be a concern of mine. I'd want that to happen. And then, you know, they would have, you know, through the
Continue that sidewalk down that
Yeah.
path, that direction would
that'd
be
be very helpful.
hugely beneficial.
Yeah,
There's kids on
absolutely.
bikes all the time on that road.
We
Absolutely.
did make it a point to tell them that they should continue the path along the respective frontages. We made that a
Absolutely.
point to let
Absolutely.
them know.
Yep.
But without, again, not to belabor the point, without planned development district, some of these items
Don't
are
have,
on the table.
yeah, they're on the table.
That's the only way that you might find the 1% wiggle room that you would get me in to move forward. So,
Well, it's good discussion, and I appreciate that. I think more than anything else, Scott and I wanted this group to know that they were back and what happened at planning and zoning. I'm sure you might have read it, but the discussion is worth having for this group.
I appreciate it.
Does anybody else have anything else on that?
Do you not?
Do we have anything else at all to talk about tonight?
No?
I do not have anything else.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Lee,
Yes,
Walter.
Yes?
Carter.
Yes.
that went